He sold our home, the one we built together, to buy a beach house with his mistress. He thought I'd cry, beg, or disappear. Instead, I turned every lie, every forged signature, and every stolen dollar into the weapon that would destroy him. By the time he realized what I'd done, he was homeless, bankrupt, and replaced. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about strategy, about what happens when a woman stops begging for answers and starts building consequences. If you've ever been lied to, cheated on, or underestimated, hit like, subscribe, and stay till the end. Because by the final minute, you'll understand why I didn't just get even. I got everything. My name is Sophie Hale, and the moment my marriage ended began with an email I wasn't supposed to see. It was a Tuesday morning. The office smelled of burnt coffee and new deadlines. I was halfway through reviewing a design proposal when my husband's name flashed on my screen. Oliver Hale, bank transfer confirmation. For a moment I thought it was spam. But curiosity, that small, dangerous voice inside all betrayed women, made me open it. $120,000, transferred, out of our joint account. The recipient, a name I didn't recognize, Nadia Summers. At first, I stared at the screen, waiting for logic to catch up. Maybe it was a work thing. Maybe he'd invested in something. Maybe. Then the message below the transaction appeared. Transfer done. The beach house is officially ours. Can't wait to start our new life, my love. Oh, it's strange. The body knows heartbreak before the mind accepts it. My hands went cold. My throat tightened like a fist. And yet, when I called him, my voice was calm. He answered after 3 rings, that smooth, confident tone he always used when he thought he held the upper hand. Hey, Soph. What's up? I swallowed. You made a transfer today. Want to tell me what it was for? A pause. Too long. Then a soft laugh. Oh, that. Yeah, I moved some money. Investment opportunity. Don't worry about it. An investment? I asked. In Nadia Summers? Silence. The kind that stretches and breaks something inside you. Then, Sophie, he said quietly, let's not do this over the phone. I felt something in me harden. Oh, we'll do this however you want, Oliver. Just don't hang up on me. But he did. For 6 years, I'd built a life with that man. A life I thought was partnership. We'd scraped together every dollar to buy our little townhouse in Portland, renovated it room by room, fought about paint colors, cried over bills, dreamed about the next step. I thought we were a team. Turns out I was the project. He was just the architect of my illusion. By the time I got home that evening, I already knew. His car was gone, his closet half empty, the framed photo from our anniversary missing from the dresser. But what broke me wasn't the emptiness. It was the note. Sophie, you've always been strong. You'll be fine. Nadia and I need a fresh start. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Oliver, that's when I realized he wasn't just leaving me. He was robbing me. The next morning, my lawyer, Carla, confirmed what I feared. Oliver had listed our house for sale 3 weeks earlier without my consent. How's that even possible? I asked, pacing her office, heart pounding. Carla frowned, flipping through the paperwork. He can't, not legally. You're both on the deed. But then her expression changed. Oh, wait. Sophie, look at this clause. He refinanced the mortgage last fall, right? Yes. Well, he filed a quitclaim deed transferring your ownership to his name. You signed it, but it looks like you were under the impression it was part of the refinance. I froze. You mean I signed away the house? Carla nodded grimly. He tricked you. But the signature was under false pretense. We can contest it. I sank into the chair, hands trembling. He's selling my home to buy a beach house with her. Carla leaned forward, voice low and deliberate. Then we'll make sure he doesn't sell it. Not 1 inch. For the next 48 hours, I operated like someone possessed. I gathered emails, bank statements, screenshots. Every transaction he'd made, every whisper of deceit became fuel for my fury. I didn't cry. Not yet. There's no room for tears when you're planning someone's downfall. 3 days later, Carla called. Good news. We filed an injunction to stop the sale. It'll freeze any transfer of the title until the case is reviewed. Meaning Oliver can't touch a cent of that money. If he tries, it's fraud. For the first time in days, I smiled. Let him walk into his new life thinking he'd won. Let him believe he'd left me broken and homeless. Because when the truth hit, when the deal collapsed, and his shiny new mistress realized he had nothing to offer, the sound of their downfall would be music. I didn't have to wait long. That weekend, I got a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, the voice on the other end was sweet, polished, but shaking with anger. Is this Sophie Hale? Yes, this is Nadia Summers, Oliver's partner. I just found out our beach house deal is void. The lawyer said you froze it. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Of course I did. You can't buy stolen property, Nadia. Her tone sharpened. He told me it was his house. Oh, I'm sure he told you a lot of things. Silence. Then, colder, you're going to regret interfering. I already regret marrying him, I said softly. But I promise you, he'll regret underestimating me even more. I hung up before she could reply. That night, as I stood by the window of my townhouse, I felt the first flicker of something like peace. The city lights glowed against the glass, reflecting back the version of me I'd almost forgotten. Not the wife, not the victim. The woman who still owned everything he tried to steal. He thought he'd left me ruined, but I was just getting started. 'Cause you don't destroy a woman like me, you teach her how to fight. Grief makes you slow. Anger makes you reckless. But clarity makes you dangerous. And by the end of that week, I was crystal clear. Oliver hadn't just left me. He'd built an entire fantasy life on my back. The man I once trusted with my future had weaponized my love to fund his betrayal. But here's what he didn't know. I'd already started documenting everything. I spent hours digging through old records, bank statements, loan forms, emails, texts, anything that showed how deep the deception went. The deeper I looked, the uglier it got. He hadn't just drained the joint account. He'd been siphoning off small amounts for months, disguised as utility payments and investment transfers. 20 here, 40 there, all carefully hidden under legitimate categories. He'd been planning this long before Nadia showed up. Which meant his betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was engineered. And that realization hit harder than any heartbreak ever could. Carla and I met again the following Monday. She looked exhausted but determined. I've traced the transfer trail, she said, spreading out the documents. He funneled money through a holding company. Classic move meant to hide his assets before the divorce. Can you use that? I asked. Her eyes flicked up. Oh, we'll use everything. Once the court sees this, he'll be lucky to keep his toothbrush. I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that tastes like iron, quiet, sharp, deliberate. Because now I had two missions. Stop the sale. Ruin the fantasy he built with my money. The next day, I called Nadia. She didn't answer the first 2 times, but the third time, she picked up her voice clipped, impatient. What do you want? I just wanted to thank you, I said sweetly. For what? She snapped. For exposing who my husband really is. You did in 3 months what I couldn't do in 6 years. Her tone faltered. You're crazy, maybe, I said softly, but I'm also still legally his wife, which means everything he buys, including your shiny little beach house, is marital property, and when the divorce is done, half of it belongs to me. There was silence. Then she laughed, brittle, nervous. You're bluffing. Maybe, I said. You'll find out soon enough. Then I hung up. That night, I poured a glass of wine and stared out the window as rain streaked the glass. It was strange how quickly grief turns into focus once you stop trying to fix the person who broke you. I didn't cry anymore. I strategized. A week later, Oliver called. His tone was defensive, irritated like a man whose perfect plan had started to collapse. Sophie, what the hell did you do? The bank froze my accounts. I said mildly, that must be frustrating. They said there's a legal injunction. Yes, I interrupted. Turns out selling a house he forged paperwork for is illegal. Who knew? He exhaled sharply. Look, let's not turn this into a war. I made mistakes, okay? But we can fix this. You want to fix it? I asked, voice calm. Then tell me, was she worth it? Silence. Then a muttered, you wouldn't understand. I laughed quietly. You're right, Oliver. I wouldn't understand how someone could sell his soul for beachfront property. And before he could respond, I hung up. The following week was chaos, but not for me. I stayed quiet, composed, invisible. Oliver, on the other hand, was spiraling. The house sale was blocked. His offshore transfer was frozen. And Nadia, from what Carla's investigator told me, had started withdrawing her own funds, terrified of legal exposure. Turns out her dream home had been bought with money flagged for fraud, which meant she wasn't just his mistress, she was now a suspect. The perfect couple had turned into co-defendants overnight. I wanted to savor it, but part of me still wanted closure, answers. So one evening, I drove to the beach house. It was smaller than I expected, unfinished, cold, the walls echoing with the emptiness of bad intentions. Nadia's car was gone, but his was there. When I walked inside, he didn't even look surprised. I figured you'd come, he said quietly. Of course, I said. You took everything else that was mine. He rubbed his face, exhausted. You don't get it, Sophie. I need it out. You were comfortable, predictable. I wanted something exciting. I stared at him for a long time. You wanted freedom? I said. So why does it look like a half-finished house and a bank account full of debt? He didn't answer. You thought you were playing chess, I continued, voice low. But you were just moving pieces on a board I still owned. I handed him a folded envelope, a copy of the court injunction, and the pending fraud charges. Here's your freedom, I said. Enjoy fighting for it. Then I turned and left my heels clicking against the hollow floor. By the time I got home, Carla had left me a voicemail. Sophie, it's official. The court sided with us. The quitclaim deed is void. Your ownership stands. The property is 100% yours. He has no claim. I pressed the phone to my chest and closed my eyes. The house he tried to steal, the one he used to fund his fantasy, was legally, irrevocably mine again. And that's when it hit me. He'd lost everything. And I hadn't lifted a single illegal finger. I just stopped protecting him. The next morning, I called his lawyer. Tell your client, I said, that he has 24 hours to remove his things from my house. Anything left after that will be donated. The lawyer sighed. You know, this is going to destroy him financially, right? I smiled. Good. Then I hung up. That evening, I sat on the porch, watching movers carry out his boxes. It felt strange, not triumphant, but clean, like breathing after being underwater too long. As the truck pulled away, I whispered to myself, you built this lie. Now live in it. And for the first time in months, I felt peace settle in. Not the fragile kind that breaks when you remember what you lost, but the solid kind that comes when you remember what's still yours. He thought he'd escaped me. But soon, he'd realized the woman he betrayed wasn't done yet. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet, legal, beautifully documented storm. Revenge isn't rage. It's architecture. It's patience measured in emails, precision filed under case numbers, and the quiet thrill of watching a man realize the walls he built were actually my design. The morning after Oliver's boxes were gone, the house felt lighter. Every room breathed again. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. But peace without closure is just a pause. And I wasn't done yet. because for men like Oliver, losing money isn't enough. They survive humiliation by rewriting the story, telling everyone they were trapped, that their wives were crazy, that it was all a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to give him that luxury, so I decided to take his favorite thing from him, his reputation. Oliver was an executive consultant at a mid-sized marketing firm called Crest and Vale, the kind of place where image mattered more than truth. He built his career on smooth charm, a tailored suit, and my unpaid labor. I'd helped him build presentations, proofread contracts, even handled half the client work he took credit for. Now, it was time to show his employers who he really was. I compiled a file precise, detailed, inarguable. Every fraudulent transaction, every falsified document, every digital footprint that tied his personal deception to professional misconduct. And on the first page, I attached the court order proving he'd forged my signature to sell her home. Then I drafted a short, polite email. Subject: Professional Conduct Concern. Oliver Hale. Dear HR, please find attached verified legal documentation pertaining to ongoing fraud and asset misappropriation involving your employee, Oliver Hale. I trust Crest and Vale values integrity as much as public image. Regards, Sophie Hale. No threats, no emotion, just facts. I hit send. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was one of Oliver's colleagues, a woman named Maya. Mrs. Hale, she began carefully, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but you might want to know Oliver's been suspended pending investigation. HR has gone nuclear. Really? I said softly. I hope they're fair. Her voice dropped. They're not just looking at him. They're reviewing every project he's touched. Turns out some of his clients complained about billing irregularities. I smiled to myself. That must be hard for him. Maya hesitated. He said you were vindictive. But honestly, I think you're smart. That line stayed with me, because it wasn't revenge that made me powerful, it was precision. Meanwhile, Oliver was unraveling. The man who once strutted through life with a grin and a Rolex had gone silent. His calls stopped coming. His social media vanished. But people talk. Portland isn't a big city when your reputation's burning. Through mutual friends, I learned Nadia had left him, took what little money she could, and fled after realizing he'd dragged her into a criminal investigation. Apparently, she'd screamed at him in a parking lot, calling him a broke fraud with delusions of grandeur. The irony was perfect. A few weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail, thick, formal, sealed with Crest's logo. Inside was a letter confirming Oliver's termination for cause and a request for my cooperation in an internal audit. Attached was something else, a copy of his non-compete clause, and a note from HR. We appreciate your transparency. Mr. Hale's violations have voided his severance and exposed the firm to liability. Legal proceedings are ongoing. In other words, he was blacklisted from his industry. No reference, no severance, no network. Just like that, the man who thought he could outsmart me couldn't even get a job. But poetic justice is never complete without witnesses. So I waited. And then, one night, I got the call I didn't expect from Oliver himself. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Sophie, please, can we talk? I took a long breath. What could we possibly have to talk about? He hesitated. You won, okay? You took everything. The house, the job, the money. I'm done fighting. You think this was a fight? I said quietly. No, Oliver. It was an autopsy. He went silent. I continued, voice low and steady. You didn't just betray me. You dismantled every piece of trust we built, and for what? A house you couldn't afford and a woman who didn't love you. That's not ambition. That's self-destruction. He exhaled shakily. You're right. No, I said. I'm finished. And I hung up. The next morning, Carla called me. He filed for bankruptcy, she said simply. It's over. I sat there, staring at the morning light filtering through the curtains. It wasn't joy I felt, not even triumph. It was freedom. The kind that comes when your enemy finally self-destructs, and all you had to do was step out of the way. A few months later, I sold the townhouse. Not out of necessity, out of choice. Because that home, once my sanctuary, was also my crime scene. I bought a small apartment downtown, overlooking the river. Quiet, sunlit, mine alone. Every morning, I brewed my coffee, opened the windows, and let the air in. It smelled like rain, ink, and new beginnings. And on my desk sat a small bronze plaque I had custom made. It read, "Built once from love, reclaimed through fire." He lost his job, his money, his mistress, and his story. But the final blow was still coming, one he'd never see. The world finally learning the truth in her own words. Revenge has an expiration date. Once it's served, what's left isn't rage, it's revelation. And after everything that happened, I didn't want Oliver's name in my mouth anymore. I wanted my life back. But peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from story, and I was finally ready to tell mine. It started with an email from a local journalist, Melissa Crane, from the Portland Ledger. She'd been following the court case and wanted to feature a perspective on financial betrayal and identity theft in relationships. Her tone was respectful, professional. "This isn't gossip," she wrote. "It's education. If you're willing to share, your experience could protect others." For a moment, I hesitated. Putting my story out there meant reopening wounds, exposing what I'd spent months rebuilding. But then I remembered all the women who'd called me crazy behind my back. All the whispers, the pitying looks, the silence when Oliver's version of the story spread. No, this time I would narrate. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Melissa listened more than she spoke. Her notepad stayed mostly blank. She wasn't after sound bites. She wanted truth. When I finished, she said softly, "You don't sound angry." I smiled faintly. "That's because I'm not. Anger was his game. I prefer precision." She laughed lightly. "That line's going in the article." When the story came out a week later, it didn't just go viral, it detonated. Headline, "The wife who outsmarted her cheating husband and took back everything he stole." It wasn't sensational, it was surgical. It laid out the deception, the forgery, the legal wins step by step, like a blueprint of poetic justice. By the second day, it was trending nationwide. People called me a genius, a hero, a cautionary tale wrapped in intelligence. But I didn't care about the fame. What mattered was this. My truth was undeniable. No one would ever call me crazy again. Oliver tried to sue for defamation, of course. His lawyer filed some half-baked claim about emotional distress and privacy invasion. The court dismissed it in less than 10 minutes. The judge even scolded him. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you can't defame someone with facts." That was the last time I ever saw his name in print. The following months were quiet. The noise of justice faded into the hum of a new life. I kept working, kept living, but something inside me had shifted permanently. I wasn't the same woman who'd once cried over a note on an empty dresser. That woman had died the day she realized love without respect is just manipulation with better lighting. Now, I was something else, sharper, calmer, unbreakable. One afternoon, I found myself back at the courthouse, not for my own case, but volunteering at a legal aid event. Carla had invited me to speak with women who'd been victims of financial abuse or coercion. When I walked into that room, 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, tired, wary, hopeful. I told them my story, not the viral one, the real one, the loneliness, the humiliation of realizing the person you trusted most had turned you into a transaction. And then I told them how I'd fought, legally, strategically, relentlessly, without losing myself. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman stood up and said, "I thought I was alone." That's when I knew this was the real revenge. Not watching him fall, but helping others rise. A few months later, I self-published a book. Not a memoir, exactly, more like a guide. The Art of Quiet Revenge, Reclaiming Power After Betrayal. It wasn't about hate. It was about boundaries, law, and the calm strength of a woman who refuses to be erased. It became an Amazon bestseller within weeks. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. One morning, while signing copies at a local bookstore, a woman approached me, probably late 30s, nervous smile. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly. "Your story, it saved me. I left before he could drain my account." I smiled, took her hand. "Good, that means it worked." And when she walked away, I realized the cycle had broken. Then, one evening, as I was cleaning my new apartment, I found something at the back of a drawer, Oliver's old watch. The one he used to wear to every client meeting, gold, polished, perfect. He must have forgotten it during the move. For a second, I considered selling it. Then I laughed. Instead, I walked out to the bridge overlooking the Willamette River. The sky was dark purple, the water black glass. I held the watch over the railing, whispered, "Here's your last investment," and let it fall. The splash was small, but satisfying, like a final period on a sentence that had gone on too long. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat by the window. Below, the city buzzed alive, indifferent, beautiful. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like an author of my choices, of my peace, of my ending. People think revenge means destruction. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is creation. It's rebuilding yourself in the ruins of their deceit. It's smiling when they expect you to scream. It's turning every scar into a signature that says, "I'm still here." Oliver taught me how betrayal works, but I taught myself how power feels. And now, every morning when I open my eyes, breathe the quiet air, and sip coffee in a home that's entirely mine, I know he didn't take anything from me. He gave me everything I needed to become who I was meant to be. If you've ever been betrayed, remember, revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks away, head high, carrying everything they thought they could steal. Hit like, share this story with someone who needs strength, and subscribe for more true stories where calm minds deliver cold justice.